Am I the asshole for leaving my girlfriend at the bar after what she did? My male 30 girlfriend, female 25, lost her job recently and she's been going out drinking a lot because of it. She'd get heavily drunk and would need me to come pick her up at odd hours when I'm working or sleeping. By the way, I hate going to bars, and one of the reasons is that I'm a recovering alcoholic. No shame in saying it. I'm proud to say that I've been sober for 16 months. Not easy, but was able to achieve this goal. It's still hard being exposed to alcohol, but I do my best to suck it up and be there for my girlfriend to take her home safe. Last night, she called me at 1 a.m. telling me she drank too much and wanted me to come pick her up and take her home. I drove to the bar she was at and saw her sitting at the counter. I told her it was time to go, but she suddenly started acting weird, yelling, telling me to get away from her and that she didn't know who I was. I told her to stop it, but she kept insisting that I wasn't her real boyfriend she was waiting for, and I needed to step away. The bartender noticed and asked if there was a problem. My girlfriend told him to kick me out, but I explained that I was her boyfriend and she just kept denying it, then laughing. The bartender didn't believe me and told me to leave. Things got heated. I walked out for a few minutes, then back inside to tell her we needed to go. She started laughing, then got a guy who looked like a bouncer involved, telling him I was bothering her and she didn't know who I was. The guy sternly said, "Hey man, you need to leave or I'll call the cops." After I gave my ID and identification that belonged to me and my girlfriend, he got loud and insisted. I threw my hands in the air and said, "Okay, fine, I'm leaving. I'm going home without you, Katie." She kept laughing and I got into my car and left feeling pissed AF. An hour later, one of her friends got her home and she didn't even seem that drunk. She was mad, asking why I left her at the bar. I was puzzled. I reminded her of what happened, but she stopped me, saying she knew and was aware, but pulled this as a prank to get a reaction out of me. I was dumbfounded. She said she was joking and didn't expect I'd actually leave and thought I was waiting for her outside my car. She even said she couldn't believe I left her there with no way home. I argued this was her fault for how she behaved, and she kept saying it was a prank and I shouldn't have taken it seriously. She ranted about how unreliable I was and how poorly I reacted to a joke. She's still arguing about it, blaming me for leaving. I get it, she's going through hard times and wants to chill a little bit, but I thought her behavior was not okay. We've been together for 5 years. Was I the asshole for publicly calling out my sister and her new husband for lying about their wedding being child-free? My stepdaughter, 15, Jane, has a burn scar around her neck and covers one side of her face. The reason was an accident that took place 4 years ago, and yes, she's already gotten tons of insensitive comments, but to me and her dad, she's still the most beautiful soul. My family's been supportive and loving towards Jane. My sister and her now husband got married days ago. They told me and my husband they decided the wedding will be child-free, meaning Jane couldn't come. They asked if that'd be okay, and we said, yeah, absolutely. We respect the bride and groom's rules. I've immediately arranged for Jane to stay with a friend that she calls Auntie. Though Jane wanted to attend the wedding, but I explained that this was a rule for everyone and we should respect that. My husband and I got to the venue, and the first thing we noticed was kids. Kids of all ages all around the venue. My husband literally stopped walking. He paused for a few seconds, looked at me, then let go of my hand and said he was out of there. He walked out, but I stood still when Mom saw me and signaled me to come join the family. But I didn't go. I asked one of the guests who had a kid with him, and he said this event allowed kids. I was seeing red at this point because I was fooled into leaving Jane at home and coming with my husband only. I ignored Mom and went straight to where my sister and her husband were standing. Then I blew up at them, asking why they lied about this being a child-free wedding when it wasn't. I asked them in front of everyone why they decided to basically lie to me and my husband and get us to exclude our daughter. Why? Is Jane somehow different from the other kids who showed up? My sister tried to calm me down, but I bluntly asked if it was because her stepniece has a burn scar, visible injury that she and her husband were too ashamed of. I literally heard guests saying, "Oh, Mom tried to get me to step off the stage," but I proceeded to call my sister and her husband awful, insensitive people with no respect for me nor their niece. My sister started crying, saying she would never, and that I misunderstood, and my brother-in-law begged me to go sit, but I refused and said I wasn't interested in supporting their marriage after this. I walked out and was followed by Mom and aunts lashing out, saying I went way out of line. They said eventually this was their day and get to decide, but still, they said I should have spoken to her privately or left instead of taking my niece back to work at my daycare center after this. I, 36 female, have been running a small daycare center in the city I live in with big demands for childcare. My brother lives in the same city and was complaining about my niece, 20, not finding a job to afford rent. He asked if she could come work at my daycare since she has experience with kids. I agreed to give and receive help since I needed to hire an additional employee. The first couple weeks were fine, but days later she came to me asking for money to buy something that wasn't urgent, but I told her that just like any other employee, she needed to wait till she receives her salary since it wasn't urgent. She tried to convince me to give her money, but I let her know that work is work and she is not my niece while working, so she has to wait. Days ago, something strange happened. We have a kid, 6-year-old, who has an iPad that he brings with him every time. When the dad, my client, came to pick up his son, he noticed the iPad was gone. We looked for it everywhere. I asked my employees and no one had seen it. I found out my niece was responsible for the kids' care that day, and after I asked her, she said she left it charging, then saw one of my employees take it. My employees swore they didn't touch it and said she saw my niece take it off the charger. The whole argument was she said versus she said. I checked the cameras and saw my niece hide the iPad behind the dumpster near the door. That was it for me. I lashed out at her and said she's not working for me anymore. She cried and begged me to give her a chance since she had no choice and did this to get money she needed for rent. I refused to argue with her. You can only imagine how small I felt when giving the dad the iPad back. It's a shame because my client is a good man and we both had conversations and meetings outside of work. My brother came to talk and said me kicking my niece out over some client was a huge overreaction on my part and that everyone deserves a second chance since my niece had shown how committed she is in other areas at that daycare. I argued that my reputation is all that matters, and if anyone knew about this, I'm screwed. I honestly can't take this risk and rehire her. Besides the fact that she falsely accused one of my employees of stealing the iPad when it was her who hid it, then I explained how this made my client feel, which is awful. My brother called me unbelievable for choosing a client's feelings over my relationship with my niece and said I overreacted since my niece apologized and the iPad was returned. He got other family members involved saying while my niece made a mistake, she is worthy of a second chance.